How's it going? Welcome back to Dividend Compounders with Cheese. This is how I would generate $5,000 in passive income from dividends and how much it would cost. So these are the four companies I would invest into because not only are they respectable with a capital R, but they each pay a decent dividend. Now, mind you, Altria is the guy in the group project that smells and is dirty, but does all of the work so he gets the invite. He would otherwise be left out of this experiment. Altria is in the tobacco business and currently has a 8.2% dividend yield. And in the past 3 years, they have been growing their dividend at a rate of 4%. Again, I hate the company and its products and what it does to people. But in investing, I separate my personal feelings from business decisions because a winner is a winner. Am I really going to boycott making money because my astrology sign and preference for green tea in lieu of coffee is making me choose emotional decisions? Get out of here. Cisco is a technology B2B company that has a decent dividend yield at 3.3%. Cisco has been struggling for the past decade or so, but 20 years ago, Cisco used to be the Google or Microsoft in the tech world. Now they're like modern day France, and everyone bags on France these days. However, believe it or not, the French under Napoleon was an unstoppable machine, but similar to other great empires, they got greedy and invaded Russia in 1812, which wiped out a good deal of men. We're talking about 400,000 French soldiers dying in the name of Russia. See, Russia's military ain't even good. It's just their terrain, weather, and climate does all of the fighting for them. Similar to Japan's waters whenever people try to attack them through the sea. On that note, name a more unlikable country than Russia right now. Hershey is in the business of making candy that gets passed out during Halloween and on the desk of HR if they're helpful and friendly. Their dividend yield is 2.9%, which means for every share of Hershey that you own, you're getting $5.48 in dividends each year. Believe it or not, I visited a chocolate factory a few weeks ago, and no, it wasn't a magical experience. In fact, it made me disgusted because I couldn't help but imagine how many bugs, pubes, and sweat get grinded into the chocolate making process. Target is a retail business that is not known for their groceries, but for their apparel and household goods section. Their dividend yield is 2.8%, and they have been increasing their dividend payment for 54 years. I hate Target. In fact, if you're a married man and you've been dragged into a Target before, you understand why. It's a shopping paradise for middle or upper class women. And much like Costco, it has loyal customers. And no, they're not targeting the same folks who shop at Walmart. Not trying to point out the obvious, but you're more likely to see a white farmer selling puppies out of his pickup truck at a Walmart parking lot, and at Target, you're more likely to see a herd of sorority girls shopping for their next fundraising event. Now, to generate $5,000 in dividends, it would take about $78,500 invested into these companies, and what you see on your screen right now is how I would allocate the funds into each company. So $78,500 invested into those four companies gives us an average dividend yield of 6.3%, and when we break down the $5,000, that's about $400 a month in dividends. That's enough to pay for your stepdaughter's Korean skincare addiction that she religiously purchases from social media influencers. I'll tell you what, just smother a stick of butter on your face and call it a day. Wrinkles be damned. But let's dive a little deeper and see what happens in the future. Speaking of the future, when robots and AI take over all our jobs, I'll see you guys out on the battlefields. It's going to be a hell of a day when it's humanity versus them Terminators. Before we run any forecasts, we need to set the parameters, right? Kind of like how when Russia sold Alaska to the US for $7.2 million. They ran their forecasts and numbers and figured they were getting the better deal. Joke's on them because Alaska is home to recorded UFO kidnappings, depression, and oil money. But in our little experiment, we are going to assume the following. The stocks will grow at a rate of 5% year over year, the dividends will grow 4.5% annually, and we will throw in $250 a month into the portfolio instead of spending it on cheap crap off Temu. And when we do this, here's what happens in 20 years. Look at how the dividend income grows year over year. From year one of roughly $5,000 to $17,000 in year 20. What you see on your screen right now is the portfolio valuation and the dividend income. And I thought it was cool how on year 11, the dividend income would double from the initial $5,000. And after 20 years, the portfolio valuation would result in a balance of $300,000 and pay a dividend income of about $18,000. This is at the end of 20 years. $18,000 might be enough to pay for a few classes at USC, otherwise known as the University of Spoiled Children. Based off of their website, the tuition is just shy of $70,000 per year. That's ridiculous. At that price point, I would demand the faculty dean himself to tutor me in my freshman biology class. Goodness gracious. Now, just for fun, I know your idea of fun is watching a baseball game with a six-pack, but hear me out. Running the exact same experiment with the same variables for 20 years. If we reinvest the dividends back into the portfolio, this would be the final product. The portfolio would be a pimple above $800,000 and spit out an annual dividend payment of about $48,000. And you would think that's the conclusion of the video. But Timothy, you already know we're about to dig a little deeper and beyond the numbers. Up until this point, we looked at the present and the future for these four companies. But what about the past? What can the past tell us of their future forecast? I decided to compare these four companies to the S&P 500, which is referred to as the market because it is a collection of the biggest and baddest publicly traded companies in the US. What you see on your screen right now is a graph that shows the performance for the past 10 years. The dark blue is our four companies, and the teal line is the S&P 500. I would argue the teal line has been smashing balls for the past 4 years because of the inclusion of tech companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Meta. The tech industry is on an unstoppable rampage like the Comanches in the 18th century. Nobody could stop them because they were the best horseback riders in the land. Which meant when they went to war, the Mexicans and Spanish had no real advantage over them, even with their rifles. And you're absolutely right. This isn't a history podcast. So let's get back on topic. With $10,000 invested into our four companies back in 2015 and reinvesting the dividends back into the portfolio, that would have resulted in $20,000. Whereas on the other hand, the S&P 500 would have turned that same $10,000 into $31,000. But hey, past performance is not indicative of future gains, but it planted a seed into my small brain. What if we were to do this experiment of yielding $5,000 in dividends, but with VTI and VOO instead? VTI and VOO are the most popular and ideal index funds on the market for good reason. Well, it would take $430,000 invested into these two index funds to generate $5,000 in dividends. But why VTI and VOO, you might ask? When we look at VTI in the past 20 years, their total performance has been 642%, which is pretty crazy, and why people say that phrase all over the internet, which is time in the market beats timing the market. And with VOO, for the past 14 years, their performance has been 561%. So based on the total returns, it's hard not to like VTI and VOO. Kind of like how Europe viewed the US when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor and the Americans joined the fight. Once the Americans joined in combat, it was game over. These days, Europeans be making fun of Americans for anything and everything. But that's why when I go to McDonald's, I order freedom fries and not French fries. So disregarding what it takes to generate $5,000, isn't it better to just go VTI? In fact, you should watch my video on VTI. Anyways, what do you think? And if you're wondering why my voice sounds a little different, well, that's because I'm in stage 2 of my gender transitioning treatment. I'm just kidding. This is Amos's wife. He asked to narrate the video because he's not feeling too well. I heard if you leave a funny comment down below, he might recover faster. Leave your best jokes down below. He'll be looking forward to reading them. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.